Chris online.
Yeah, we should be able to.
Okay, there we go. We'll just replay that starting online. Oh, meeting to order. Is there any public comment online? I don't see any hands. Dana made a motion to approve the meeting minutes. We're waiting on a second. Oh, there we go. And with the second, okay. All right, then we'll move into our RAC update and Tom.
Can we,
Sorry.
I was gonna say, when we have someone speak, so we don't.
Oh, can you, Candace, can you unmute, let us know you're hearing us, if you are, or someone online?
I can hear you guys fine.
Perfect. All right, Tom, go ahead and take it away.
Okay, great. Do you want me to play the deck or what? No, you're doing it. Okay. Okay, great. Well, I'll just have to ask in advance. So I just have a few slides to give you the flavor of all the things that we're doing right now. We have a lot going on with respect to the ozone air quality planning. So on the next slide, then there's we're going to cover the plan chapters, a little bit about the data, technical data, and then how we're looking at control strategies. So then on the next slide, these are our chapters for the attainment plan, or the SIP. We're rolling out the chapters. You can see the titles here, a few every month from February through June. And what we do is we send them to our board a week or so before the meeting, and then we give an overview of those chapters at the next board meeting. You can see when those meeting dates are. So next week we'll be releasing the appropriately named background overview document, chapter 1. Chapter 2 is about the monitoring data in the 9-county region that's used for tracking ozone, and talks about the quality control and quality assurance. And then chapter 6 is about what's called RACT, or reasonably available control technology. Those are the kind of end of the smokestack type controls that we list out that are required for documentation by EPA. They're similar to the measures that are up here in chapter 7 from last month, but these are the ones that we were required to track RACT and rack them separately. And then you see the topics that we'll move through in the April through June timeframe. It'll wrap up in June with the board hopefully endorsing all the chapters that go into the plan. And that'll be the plan that then goes into the Air Quality Control Commission rulemaking process. Then on the next slide, I'm going to move into some analysis updates that we're working on. Thought you all might be interested in a flavor of the data that we're working with right now. So on the next slide is a timeline that we use, a Gantt chart, quite a bit. It's broken into these high-level areas, kind of technical analysis and modeling, attainment plan preparation, and then the overview, the review and direction we get from our RAC board, and eventually from the Air Quality Control Commission. So you can see that we have a lot going on here at the same time in early 2025. Technical work to determine the likelihood of reaching the standard by next year, by 2026, and providing additional analysis. We have the preparation work where we're looking at emission reducing control strategies. That's a very active area. And then the plan development's going on at the same time. So now with the chapters being pushed out over this 5-month period for review by the board, and we'll finish that by July, and then there'll be a rulemaking hearing on the plan and the strategies in November. So kind of a carefully laid out long-term process. So on the next slide, then, just kind of a near-term update. We have to get data from not only in Colorado, but also from the surrounding states and frankly, the rest of North America from what's called the National Emissions Modeling Platform. And that's something that EPA does the data processing on, that the states all have input into, including Colorado. So we just at the end of January received the comprehensive 2026 projections data from that platform, and we've been starting to evaluate it. And in February, I'm going to present some data here that we've started to look at the emissions data, and we're starting the ozone air quality modeling that will tell us where we are by 2026. Then that third sub-bullet is we have to pull out the days that have a lot of smoke or the few days that have stratospheric ozone intrusion so that we don't use those in our baseline planning calculation. So we're trying to, by early March, by March 7th, the date of the board meeting, we're trying to have the design values for where we expect to be by 2026 to present to the board. That those are estimates, they're modeled estimates, and they include all the strategies that we currently know about. And then the magic or the benefit of knowing what the model says we'll do by 2026 is that if we're trying to reach the standard of 70 and we model a 74, that gives us an idea of what additional reductions we need to get that 5 or more percent that's left to reduce. So we're trying to make that March 7th board meeting. If we don't, we will do it on March 19th, these design values at the next Control Strategy Committee meeting. We'll also, in the second half of March, hold a longer attainment planning forum where we present more details of the technical and control analysis. So on the next few slides, I'm going to talk a little bit about data. This is just to give you an idea of the emissions information that we're working with. This is obviously rolled up to a high level. All the data are, can't quite see the whole, there it is. These are grouped into, some of these are kind of code here, electric generating units, other industrial point sources that are not electrical generating units, oil and gas emissions, on-road vehicles that you all are familiar with, the non-road engines and sources, non-point, which are widely distributed sources that aren't regulated. They're only tallied up by county. So this just shows you for NOx and VOC how much we estimate the change to be for summer ozone day emissions. As you can see, there are some categories that have very significant reductions. On-road is forecast to drop by over 30% for NOx in this 5-year period. Other categories go up, non-road goes down. But if you kind of look at the net across all the emissions, it's roughly a 9% reduction for NOx. And then looking to the right, similar kinds of changes by category, but only about a 2% reduction in VOC. So the way air quality planning works for these air quality standards is we have to estimate the effect of these changes in emissions over only a 5-year period. So this is a very short-term kind of change. It's a lot different than the last time these plans were done, where we were looking out about 10 years. And so that's quite a bit difference, and we don't expect to see the same amount of changes in only this 5-year period. But these are the data that we're working with, and as you can see, some of them are really based on local data with help from North Front Range NPO, which we really appreciate. On the next slide is a couple of pie charts. This is kind of the big picture. So 160 tons per day of NOx from anthropogenic sources in 2022. That goes down, maybe 10% there to 146. And you can see the changes by those major source categories. I think this is easier to visualize. So there's your big change for on-road from 30% of the 160 down to 23% of the 146. Non-road basically remains the same. Oil and gas actually goes up a little bit for NOx over this 5-year period. Then on the next slide, this is the complementary VOC data. Very little change in the grand total, 258 to 254. And so therefore the subcategories shown in the pie chart don't really change very much. There's a couple percent for on-road, but with the overall total not changing very much, the pie chart distributions also don't change very much. Then on the next slide is a way to look at power plant NOx emissions. So these are all the roughly 36 power plant, fossil fuel power plant units in kind of northern and eastern Colorado. So from Pueblo up to Fort Collins and then out onto the eastern plains, including, Brush and other plants like that. So the takeaway message, if you kind of look at this in soft focus, is that there's really 5 power plant units that produce the vast majority of all the NOx that contributes to ozone. So the XL Comanche and the Rawhide Generating Station and the Nixon plant are all coal units that will be operating for the next few years, so they're not likely to change very much. The Pawnee plant changed in the last year from being a coal unit to a gas-fired unit, so its emissions have actually decreased quite a bit relative to the past. And then Cherokee Unit 4 is a real workhorse down in the metro area that is also a gas-fired unit. We have to allocate these NOx emissions for every hour of the ozone season from May through September. So we actually have the exact emissions rate from each power plant. This is from the EPA acid rain program. So you can compare, for example, the coal unit at Rawhide to the smaller gas turbines, and you can see the rate of NOx production. So we'll be feeding this information into the model for each of the power plants that's listed at the top of the chart. Then on the next slide, I'm going to pivot a little bit to control strategies. So we've been talking with our board and control strategy committee about developing slates of control strategy instead of looking at strategies just one at a time. So I'm going to walk through kind of how we're organizing that. On the next slide, we're on this, again, kind of aggressive schedule where starting back in November, we told our board that this is the way we're going to move through things. So we have, months where we're going to do these forums. The Black Diamonds are months when we review the control strategy, all the group of control strategies at the CSC meetings. And then we have milestones to check in on the board. So anytime we want to present a package or a batch of control strategies kind of lumped together, we've identified where on this chart that we would do this. But it all kind of ends up in June with the board hopefully endorsing their preferred mix of control strategies that would go on to the Air Quality Control Commission. On the next slide, this is more schedule stuff. So these are the major topics that you see listed in the middle 2 columns. We've gone through venting and blowdowns of equipment from oil and gas. We've had a meeting on landscape maintenance regulation, converting gas-powered landscape maintenance devices to electric. Just today, we went through the consumer products. These are, personal care products and things like that we all use, and they actually produce quite a bit of emissions. We'll come back to that with the board in March. And we're also looking, as you see, zero emission forklifts, setting targets for mobile source emission reductions. This is kind of beyond the grand total stuff that you do for, for conformity. And then it all wraps up with a couple of meetings in May and June to kind of bring these items together into various packages. So in the next slide, I'll talk a little bit about kind of what goes into this. So we have a lot of analysis and documentation. We include, packets of information for the board and stakeholders to read. We include, summaries on the RAC website. You can find this all under the control strategies part of the RAC website. We're doing a lot of engagement. So we're particularly looking for folks who work in the warehousing, entertainment, and recreation, and airports and universities industries. And we've doing a lot of coordination with the Air Pollution Control Division. So this is a complicated process because we have to, find ways that the division can take on these responsibilities if they're turned into regulations. And so we have some decision criteria that are reflected and as to when and how much we can reduce. Those are the kinds of ideas in the next steps. Then on the next slide, there we go. So this is kind of a conceptual diagram of how we form these options. So we have, for any one of the topics like landscape maintenance, we have one or more options about implementing emission reduction. So it could start with a reporting requirement for commercial landscape maintenance fleets. There could be a more stringent approach where starting in 2027, commercial operators would have use restrictions. They could only use electric devices. An even more stringent version of that would be to try and require electric only from commercial operators starting in 2026. So there's kind of different stringencies there. We have the same kind of choices for consumer products, and you can see how we can combine these together. There's sort of a menu approach, and then we want to end up with a grand slate or package of sufficient and timely emission reductions. We need to offer that to our board so they can decide, how far they want to go. Then on the next slide, this is another way to look at this. So we've prepared sort of a conceptual model, again, of slate options. There might be option one, there might be option two, there may be other options that emerge. The top three rows there are kind of things that we see with definite emission reductions by 2026, which is our target year. And then the second slate means that we would get less reductions because it wouldn't be quite as stringent in terms of being adopted. A lot of these things, when they're required in a rule or regulation, we see that those practices start to change and the market starts to change for consumer products even before the actual due date. And then there's some longer term stuff in those bottom rows. So we have a lot of kind of documentation and structural stuff to do to present these slates to our board. Then I think I have one more. Oh, I lied. That was it. So that was a quick overview of the work that's going on at the RAC on our ozone planning.
Thank you. Any questions for Tom? Okay. We'll move on to Brennan with the APC update.
Hi, everyone. A quick update from APCD on a few hearings from last month's AQCC meeting. First of those, the division recommended in attainment designation for the revised 2024 PM 2.5 NACS standard in a public hearing. The second was a rulemaking hearing. The commission adopted revisions to regulations number 11 and number 12 to update the vehicle inspection program. And then the third rulemaking hearing was in response to House Bill 22-1244. The commission adopted or established a new regulation number 30 to identify 5 priority air toxic contaminants. These were benzene, ethyl oxide, formaldehyde, hydrogen sulfide, and hexavalent chromium. And yeah, those are the updates from hearings, the AQCC meetings, and APCD.
Thank you, Brendan. Any questions for Brendan? All right, we'll move on to our first action item. He's gonna chat about the national health policy. Yes, so as you remember, you may remember last month, talked with you all about the mid-year adjustments to the 4-year targets that CDOT had, or all state duties with the opportunity to make changes to. We were in line with all of the targets, with the exception of one. The percentage of national highway system bridges by deck area classified in good condition. Currently, we have above or at 36%, and the adjusted target is 38.5%. So the request is to recommend to planning council that we change our target to 38.5%. All the rest of these, we have these adjusted targets as our targets. There were no questions at council other than, is this something that CDOT could do? And the answer to that was, we're as a region at 58%, I believe, or 57%. So yes, we are achieving. Happy to take any questions. Get a motion to recommend to council the 4-year target adjustments. Motion to recommend the council the 4-year whatever target. Yes.
Sorry.
There you go. Sorry, all in favor? All opposed? Next, we have a presentation. Come to work for the CDOT 2025 passenger. Thank you. Nice to be back. We're Bornhoft. Nice to see so many familiar faces. I am the Main Streets and Active Transportation Section Manager at CDOT. And also, I believe online is Annalise Banvano. She's the Bike Ped Program Coordinator at CDOT. And she and I have been working on the statewide active transportation plan. So I wanted to share some information about that planning effort with you all today. You can go to the next slide. We'll be providing an overview of the plan, talk about a prioritization tool that we're developing, and next steps for completing the plan and having it adopted by the Transportation Commission. So I want to start with the definition. I'm sure you know this, but active transportation is a term that's been used more and more in lieu of bicycle and pedestrian. And this section that I work in at CDOT used to be called the bicycle and pedestrian section until 3 years ago when it was renamed. So the way we're using active transportation is to include any human scale and typically human powered mode of transportation, including walking, biking, using a scooter, skateboard, wheelchair, or other personal assisted mobility device. So it's really a broad term encompassing a lot of different human scale modes of transportation. So CDOT has a bicycle and pedestrian plan. It was adopted in 2012 and went through a minor update in 2015. So it has been a while since CDOT has taken a comprehensive look at active transportation, bicycle and pedestrian needs at a statewide level. So what we're doing with this plan is setting goals, policy recommendations, and strategies and action steps so that we at CDOT can better support all of our plan partners in advancing bicycle and pedestrian work across the state. We are doing that by integrating with local and regional bicycle and pedestrian plans. So the plans that are done at the local level are so foundational and important for advancing walking and biking. So what we're looking to do is how can we build on that great work that's already been done? And we're creating a tool to prioritize active transportation investments. And I'll be talking about that in more detail later on in this presentation. We're also integrating with other statewide planning initiatives. So we're at a time right now when CDOT is working on the next long range plan up to 2050. CDOT and other state agencies are working on the strategic highway safety plan. And the Division of Transit and Rail is working on a transit connection study and a statewide transit plan. So there's a lot of planning work going on right now. And we're looking at integrating bicycle and pedestrian considerations across all of those plans that we can be working together. I also want to highlight that this statewide active transportation plan is not a project-based plan. So there's no list of projects in this plan. It is that higher level strategy of how CDOT can better support our partners. So next slide. We've had a few phases of public involvement. So our first phase was held over the summer last year. We had a public survey open, and we received over 3,000 responses from around the state. This survey was open to anyone who wanted to take it. We shared it through a couple different channels. One of them was sending it out to planning partners. So some of you in this room hopefully probably took this survey, and thank you for your time taking it and shared it with your the people that you know. We also made it available at in-person events, shared it with bicycle and pedestrian advocacy organizations, and we got responses from all across the state, all different types of responses. You know, we asked people how often they walk and bike. Some people never walk or bike who took the survey, but we do recognize it's not a random sample survey. It's not statistically valid to the needs totally across Colorado, even though we do think we got a lot of different perspectives reflected in that survey. Phase 2 of our public and stakeholder engagement centers on the vision, goals, and strategies for this plan and on the implementation plan. And to do the outreach for those two phases, we're really working with our community advisory committee. So this community advisory committee is made up of local and state agency representatives, NPO and TPR representatives, and bicycle and pedestrian advocates. This group has met twice so far and is going to be 2 more times as we wrap up this plan. And it's open to anybody. I think some in this room have already been involved in the community advisory committee. And if you haven't been but want to, just email me or Annalise and we'll get you added onto those meeting invites. We've had really engaging discussions and interactive conversations with this group. And so I really appreciate taking the time and participated in that to give us feedback on this plan. Oh yeah, logos from the groups who've been involved in the community advisory committee, reflecting communities across the state, state partner agencies, and advocacy groups. So as I said, the plan is highly connected to other planning initiatives. And so the 4 goals that we have in this plan show a lot of overlap with PD14. PD14 is CDOT's policy directive that directs our long-range plan. And in PD14, we have 3 main goals. It's advancing transportation safety, fixing our roads, and sustainably increasing transportation choice. So the themes of safety and choice are emphasized in our active transportation plan goals as well. And another point of overlap was with the governor's vision that he released for transportation late last year, vision for 2035. And that really emphasized the importance of providing more pedestrian and bicycle facilities to allow affordable transportation options to connect people to where they need to go. And so those themes are also being elevated in our 4 goal areas. So the 4 goals are safety, equity, mobility choice, and connected communities. And we will be returning to these in a moment when I talk about the next topic, which is that prioritization tool that we are in the midst of developing right now. So I wanted to share some information about this tool and open to your feedback on this tool as well. So this tool that we're developing is a map-based tool, and it's for all state highways. The vision is for it to encompass all roadways, but due to timing and data availability for this initial launch of the tool, we are focusing just on state highways. And what it does is it brings together data from a number of different data sets that are all relevant for active transportation, sort of providing a one-stop shop to look at relevant data and facilitate more data-informed decisions when we have active transportation investment decisions to be made. So it is highlighting priority segments and those critical gaps that will build out a more complete network. What we've done is applied a scoring methodology to each 1 mile segment of the state highway network. So there's 9,340 segments, and they each have a score in this tool based on the data that I'll be talking about next. So the data has been organized according to those 4 goals that I mentioned in the plan. So starting with safety, we identified the data that together is telling the safety story, where we need to make improvements to address safety for vulnerable road users, the bicyclists and pedestrians. So each map that you'll see is color coded the same way from blue to red. And blue indicates there's not a lot of opportunity from investing in that location to address that particular issue that's being described with the data. So for this map of safety, you're seeing a lot of blue. It's just because a lot of the safety incidences have happened in metro areas. And so there are orange and red, which is kind of hard to tell zoomed out at the statewide level. But definitely a lot of red, the Denver metro and northern Colorado and along the Front Range. So those red areas indicate the greatest opportunity for investment by addressing the safety issues through enhanced infrastructure. The 3 data points that we looked at for safety include vulnerable road user crashes, which is any crash involving a pedestrian or bicyclist. We did normalize that data based on active transportation activity levels. What we used was the streetlight LBS data, which gives a sense of how many trips are happening in that vicinity using an active mode. Our second data point is the high injury network. That's a set of data points that were determined in CDOT's 2023 Vulnerable Road User Safety Assessment that looked at serious injury and fatality VRU crashes. And there's only, I'm forgetting how many, there's 39 statewide on local and state highways, and maybe half of those are on state highways. So it's not a large number of locations. So even though the first 2 bullet points seem like they're getting similar things, they're actually highlighting a lot of different areas across the state. Our third data point is the level of traffic stress, which looks at how stressful it is to be a pedestrian or bicyclist in that segment based on how many vehicles are traveling that segment, how fast they're going, how separated the VRU is from the motorized traffic. So together you're getting a picture on this map of where we could have most benefit from investing in active transportation facilities by addressing these safety issues. So next slide. All right, the next goal area is mobility choice. This one you're seeing a lot more sort of mid-range values in that yellow to orange range. To get the composite score for this goal area, we're looking at 4 different factors. Segments where there is missing sidewalk or bicycle facilities. And as I mentioned, this tool is doing 1 mile segments. So if there's any piece of that 1 mile segment that's missing sidewalk or a bicycle facility, we're including it as missing that facility that's missing somewhere in that 1 mile segment. We look at where the scenic byways are located, proposed US bikeways. We include short trips. This one I'm particularly excited about. It is from the statewide travel demand model, and it looks at the amount of trips that are occurring on that highway segment that are 3 miles or less. We took both the base year of the travel model and the 2045 forecast year to give a sense of where there's unmet demand, where trips that are occurring that could be on bike or ped modes if the facilities were there, if it was safe. And then last, we have existing demand. This is from the Strava data set, which, if you're familiar with it, often leans towards the recreational uses for walking and biking, although there are folks who use it for transportation purposes too. But we really wanted to include that unmet demand through the short trips as a complement to the data we have for existing demand, given that recreational focus in the Strava data set. So again, you're seeing
little more red in the Front Range area, foothills. It's still reflecting a lot of different need for mobility choice from the state. So next slide. All right, this is our third component area on connected communities, and this one's really focused on connecting to other places where people need to go. So transit stops, schools, parks and trails, main street locations, and population and employment centers. This one's a little bit more straightforward and it matches pretty closely to our urban areas. And last slide is on equity. So for equity, we're using two different factors. One of them is the disproportionately impacted communities definition that comes out of Colorado State statute and is defined through the CDPHE's Enviroscreen screen tool. And there are 8 factors within there. And instead of just using a binary, what we did is we brought it in as each factor that a community qualifies for under DI gives it more sort of points within this system because it has more layers of disadvantage. So the block groups that have more disproportionately impacted community factors get higher points within this scoring framework. We also brought in data points from the American Community Survey to look at mobility barriers, which included 0 vehicle households, population under 18, population 65 and older, and population with a disability. So then what you see here, the areas in red are popping out because they have more disproportionately impacted community factors or more mobility. So next slide are the preliminary composite results, adding together those 4 component categories to show which segments of our state highway network have the highest sort of need and opportunity for investing in active transportation. Yeah, and so as part of this, we're developing an interactive tool that allows people to go in, search by highway segment, search by MPO area, search by county, and get access to the underlying data and to the scores, just to facilitate that information sharing. This is not an end-all be-all type of tool. It is really intended to be the spark of conversations. It could be used in a variety of different contexts. So next slide shows a closer look for the North Front Range region of the areas that are scored in this tool. And so I'll pause here and just see what questions you have, anything that looks not accurate or surprising in this map. Or any questions you have on what I've said so far about the tool or about the plan.
I have a quick question about intersections. I always feel like that's something that is so important, right? That's where we see 80% of our crashes for all of those, but especially for vulnerable road users. Do you have any policy in this plan that looks at when we should grade separate or when we should find alternative solutions to some of those things?
It's a great question, and I think intersections is something you're hoping that this tool could help address, and it would be like phase 3 probably of the tool. We don't have guidance in the plan right now about that question. I think one of the things we'll be talking about in the user guide for this tool is considering the local network as it relates to the state highway network and considering those crossings. Along with when parallel facilities exist in the local network that mean the state highway network is not the place to put the bike ped facility. So you'll notice I-25 is color coded down here, but that's not talking about riding facilities on the interstate, it's about a parallel facility. And so you do need to interpret these results in relation to where those other facilities exist. But we do intend this tool, one other connection that we can use with this tool is CDOT's policy on bike ped accommodation within our CDOT projects. And so one of our hopes is that this can help identify the locations where a crossing is needed. We've had that piece here at North Front Range where the crossing by 25 was really critical. Wasn't identified as early on in that process as it could have been, and so we're hoping that this could be a way to start those conversations earlier about where the state processes are needed and most valuable.
Some of the work with the US 34 TAC, I guess we know that section in, between Greeley and Loveland is booming with development right now. It's not looking like a super high priority, but getting some of those grade separations in now, or those things that we know are barriers later for crossing and access. Now is the time to sort of plan and strategize for some of that stuff. So it might be helpful. It's unique to the state highway system because I feel like everywhere, for the most part, where there's state highways, that is sort of a barrier in communities to crossing or access and those kinds of things. So it's really exciting.
Does it take into any that future land use that we know is coming in the next 5 to 10 years?
It does to the extent that we looked at the statewide travel models forecast, which for North Front Range, we do, pull in North Front Range land use forecast with a statewide model. And we pulled out those trips 3 miles or under. I do wonder if it's too watered down because it's averaged with the base year travel demand short trips. And then it's just one of those factors within it and mobility choice. So I personally wonder if we were to bring that up more, how much it would change the results, because we want it to reflect that. We do want to reflect where the growth is happening and get ahead of it so you don't have this expensive retrofit.
I have a kind of a question, knowing some of the data limitations, I think you indicated that's why this focuses just directly on the state highway network.
Yeah.
Kind of how deep down that rabbit hole did you guys go looking at local facilities, and were there any what were the main kind of gaps that prevented that? I'm not sure if the VRU assessment looked at just the state facilities or if that was just local as well.
That was everything.
Everything.
The PRU assessment. That one didn't look at the facilities provided, though, was looking at crashes that occurred anywhere in Colorado. And identified those 39 locations that had the most crashes. There's just a few barriers in. I think the barriers are primarily outside of the NPO areas. North Front Range does a great job maintaining and collecting active transportation facility data. Dr. Cobb does as well. Other MPOs have pretty good data sets. And so for the NPO areas, it's more about merging those different data schemes together. Outside of the NPO areas, it gets harder because it's so much more fragmented. And the TPRs don't have the ability to provide that support. So that's what we're looking to do next. How can we build on what we have in the NPO areas and provide a more statewide assessment of facilities across the state? We do include, though, there are, I want to say maybe 40 different shared use paths that are reflected in the facility data, even if they're not by CDOT or not the state highway. So parallel, nearby, and that gets counted as a facility being provided.
Awesome. Thank you.
One more question. Yeah, you had mentioned a couple of other plans that are going on. Are there ways, I guess, for us to get those on our agenda or to get some? Is anybody, maybe others are already part of those plans, the transit plan and the, I don't know if we're doing outreach or if we have an opportunity to bring them to.
They're already out. There will be doing outreach to the statewide. I don't know what you guys. Yeah. I'm not as familiar with the event on that. The strategic highway safety plan, they were doing more CDOT engineering region outreach that occurred already.
I think it was. Yeah, me and Russell were there.
So it'd be great to, it's always great to hear what you guys are working on and to understand sort of the big framework, so.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
And you have another slide on next steps. You can go to that. Okay, so as I mentioned, the Community Advisory Committee is meeting 2 more times, and like to get involved, let me know. We're working on finalizing the objectives and strategies, performance measures, and we're refining that project prioritization tool. We anticipate having this plan out for review in April. And what will happen with adoption is that the statewide plan will have this plan as an appendix. And so together as a package, they'll go to the TC for adoption, likely in August, but we're sort of tied to however the statewide plan schedule works out. Yeah, thank you so much for the time, and if there are any other thoughts or questions that come up, feel free to reach out to me.
The Freight Northern Colorado plan update. Sure.
All right, hello everyone. This is an update to the 2026 Freight Northern Colorado plan. So kickoff for this plan was in November of 2023. Different person and a lot of time has passed. So we'll run through some of the stuff, retreading what was in the previous presentation, and then it's more. First off, a little background on me. I was previously before this job with the Freight Mobility and Safety Branch, CDOT, as an intern. So I have some experience and I've been in contact with the Freight Branch, CDOT. So the NFRMPO adopted its first freight plan in 2019. It is a comprehensive plan that describes existing conditions and provides a resource for freight data to stakeholders and the general public. The new freight plan will seek to update freight statistics and information accurately. The major goal is to help identify potential freight projects or areas of concern in the region. So this is the timeline. We have finished the goals and visioning statements, or goals and visioning. We're currently on the outreach data collection and plan outline. We'll get to the plan drafting, and then currently we are looking at Q2 of 2026 as the release date for the. So here's some of the stuff that will be new to this plan. We're looking at roundabouts on freight routes, temporary structure, from my understanding, is only one within the region, but leaving it open to do more. Oversized overweight, past permitting data, standard chapter 6 and super loads, and also information on how to see the current oversized overweight restrictions. City and county freight corridors. I will be in contact with some of you to try to get your specific freight corridors, or if you have preferred freight corridors, along with if you have any freight quiet zones designated in your areas. We'll be looking at truck travel time reliability, emerging technologies, including commercial cargo bikes, drones, automation, electric trucks, more. Alternative fuel corridors, stakeholder and public surveys. The previous plan only used the survey results from the Colorado Freight Plan. We are now trying to make that more regional. We're trying to map freight reliant businesses in the region. CSU food delivery robots, that's the thing that started less than a month ago, and it certainly falls under emerging technologies. We're hoping to get a map of freight facilities or intermodal connectors. We will promote the mounted rules and truckers against trafficking. There will be statewide trip planning info. Then slide. There's also a list of things that will be updated from the last plan. I won't run through these, but they're here in case you thought I was missing from the last slide. We're also open to any further recommendations that of things that you think should be included in the plan. So here's what we are asking for from TAC. We will be sending out this stakeholder survey next week. We ask that you take that. And then the public's freight survey will be on all of our social medias. We ask that you help promote that in any way you can. We're looking for stakeholders to contact and send the survey within the region. So if you have any contacts for that you think would be good, please send them my way. And then lastly, we're looking for any photos involving freight. There's not many good ones in our collection or CDOT's. So if you have any in your community that we can use on the plan or on our website, please send them to me. So that is all from me. If you want more information, the freight page is linked.
What is this plan? What is the purpose of the plan?
Well, to work with freight and also to identify locations or areas of need with freight.
Say that again.
Just locations or potential projects or areas of concern involving freight.
I'll be reaching out to you.
Okay,
I have a great study going on right now. So,
perfect.
yeah. Yeah.
Right. Any questions for Jonathan? Move on to everyone's favorite topic, the 10-year priority list. They are never ending. No. So once again, and I said it at the council meeting, but I want to say it again, thank you all for coming and participating in the work session last month. So it was a little longer than. It's just last month. So I think it was very productive. I think it was good. I think we needed way more time than we actually had, but that's okay. So the outcome from that, which we did talk about a little bit at the council meeting, was that we were going to have a discussion about the data needs, prioritization, and then potential of adding Harmony Road or both County 74 to the 6 priority categories, making it 7. And then having a workshop at some point in March, if we can get all of the data that we agreed to that we want to have with just TAC members, and then going back to council in April, and then having another joint workshop with TAC council members sometime in May. In thinking about this internally, and also just talking with some TAC members, it's a little bit nebulous. What is this list for? It was much more certain when we did this 5 years ago, because there was a funding amount, there was a control total for our region, there were 10 years, and it was these were the projects. The sources of the projects are still the same. It's, RTP, it's still those 2 failed ballot attempts, so the ballot initiatives, it's 2 PELs that we have, and so those are the sources of the projects. So the question is for the data, and looking at the tiers of, because we did go through the voting process, we have our tier 1, they're not ranked in any particular order, tier 2, and then tier 3. So it's the same as it was before. So tier 3, they were just on the list, they didn't get any votes. Tier 2, they got at least 1 vote. So that means that some community who was present at the workshop felt that that project was impacting them or a priority for them, at least enough to give it a vote. And then we have tier 1, which was either one community really put all their dots there, or a lot of communities thought this particular project is important to us because it impacts us in some way. So we have those 3 tiers of projects, but the question is, what do the tiers mean? And then how do we rank those projects within the tiers so that it is an accurate reflection of the priority of those projects? There was a suggestion or a request at the workshop, and then it kind of council, do we want to go in and re-prioritize, so really isn't a priority other than functional class to the RSCs? That is a whole different project that would be separate from, that would take too much time. I think it being a functional class, so we've got the only interstate as number 1, and we have our US highways, and I believe they're probably in numerical order. It's probably how they're ranked, and then following the other facilities. So a couple of questions is, 1, how do you want to rank the projects within each tier? Should they all have the same criteria, or do they need different things? And then, because this is a lot, do we want to have a sub that would need to talk about this and then present this, the ideas at the next? And then also, RSCs. Open this. Get this one.
All of those questions you just asked. Is it worth the time to go through that at this point? I guess would be one question I have based on CDOT's timeline, and I don't know what you guys are doing your 10-year plan. And then if we pick criteria, does that align? I'm guessing your criteria will be that policy directive, the safety, asset management, mobility. Is that kind of your criteria? So
I know, obviously, to that question, but I just think one up.
yeah. So I guess the question I have is, we go through this exercise, do we need a ranking if a municipality wants to move something forward inside of any of those categories and has money and traction to do so? Can they all live an equal rank in those different, I guess, and I am the one who, I do think our best selves 5 years from now, I would love to see a tool similar to what you actually presented today, Medora, having something where we have our safety data is all in one place. We have all of our planning things all in one place. We have a one-stop shop of being able to look at all of these metrics. And maybe we don't have time to do that in this effort, but maybe we start working towards that ultimate vision of having some better framework when we walk into these conversations rather than just our hot topic of the day.
So I just had a quick question on the purpose of the North Front Range plan. Is it so that it gets projects on CDOT's 10-year plan?
So yes, we do send our tier 1 list, those priority projects go to the region, and then the region decides which from our list, from Eastern TPR, from Dr. Cog, Front Range, go on, are their priorities and go on the region 4 list. And then the region 4 list goes to headquarters, and then headquarters decides statewide priorities across the 5 regions.
So based on that, shouldn't we look at CDOT's criteria and utilize that as a ranking system to put projects on our tier?
That was part of what was, I presented at the workshop, was the TC's criteria. Now, is TC going to change the criteria from 2021? I think is the last time they updated it. I don't know. That's when they added GHG and equity pieces to that. But we have to do, we do both of those, and those are part of our plan. So it's kind of baked into that. We can go back through and look at those again as if that's just to make sure that we are meeting all of this, but I think that we are. And one of those criteria is it a regional priority? Everyone, yes. All matters.
Because what I would like to see is for us to get together and figure out what projects in the region are support, meet all those criteria that we have the highest probability to end up on CDOT's 10-year plan. That, so the regional projects actually get funded, because there's a small amount of money this year that can get funded. We don't want other, NPOs and groups to get to the top of that list and take that money.
So I guess I have 2 thoughts on that. One, if we look at our region overall, as far as like CDOT roads and non-CDOT roads, we have non-CDOT roads that are just as much as a priority for our region, that are the backbone of our functional transportation system. So defining what this effort is, yes, we do want to make sure we have projects that end up on CDOT's list, but we also have a responsibility to be looking at the entire network and the backbone. Just because it's not a state highway doesn't mean that it shouldn't be a priority for us. We're finding other mechanisms for us to do it, i.e. that's farming road, or like you're just gonna keep banging that drum and come back next time. But that being said, having a purpose to the list and what our priority corridors are, and having some definitions to it, so that way when this does go back to planning council and we request for harmony to be added, and then maybe somebody else throws out like 257 or US 17, I think that we should have some definition for what a true priority corridor is to help define our network. And then furthermore so, I would say also our tiers of projects. Realistically, we are never going to fund all these projects. So projects moving up the list from tier 3 to tier 2 to tier 1, not gonna happen unless you guys all want to. Hopefully you do. Maybe we'll get grants someday, who knows? But maybe instead of trying to like move up a ladder, maybe there could be definitions for each of the categories. So tier 1 projects are maybe projects that affect over 3 communities or have a certain ADT or certain thresholds. So that way it's not like you're competing to get on the tier 1 list. It's like you're just competing within the realm. So your project may never be a tier 1 project, or maybe we can call it something different, but it's like category 1 is like, let's face it, interchange projects. Category 2. Maybe it affects a couple different communities, and then we have category 3, which are, maybe just more hyper local or something. Because a project that say is like interior attendant on Harmony Road, for example, should never compete against State Highway 14 and Boulder. It just should. It doesn't matter how much of a priority it is. So I don't know, just a thought. But again, back to that main point, do we even have time to do this?
Who's on it? I wonder if someone could pull up the regional significant corridors.
Share your screen.
And, or just that Then it's what, I think that answers yours, that is, there is the framework and network for all of this.
The regionally significant corridors, yes, the priority, no.
Yes, yeah, and so I would say,
So I think we have it for the one, but the, like, and then the tiers, I don't think we have at all.
yes. But this sort of, I think this does do a good job of sort of prioritizing, so you guys do a lot of planning work with this network, and
So
all
that's
of these roads matter, and all of these roads are important to make that network work.
Mhm.
And so I think this exercise is where should we be focusing? And I think with Harmony, we have to just be honest about this conversation, is Harmony and I-25, right, that is on CDOT system, if it truly isn't. Oh,
It is not on CDOT's list.
I-25, sorry.
And I-25
But on
is
their
just
system.
CDOT and I-25.
Oh, on there,
is not.
sorry, yeah, it's not on the, yes, not on the list, but it's on the state system, right?
Yes.
The interchange would be,
So we could we could add the interchange because I-25 is one of the priority corridors. It just happens to be the Harmony.
And we will hopefully come back next time and we can present some data as far as that, but Harmony Road is an interesting animal, is the fact that it has more traffic, carries more traffic than most of our east-west corridors do on our regionally significant things. The only thing it isn't is a state highway. But yet those towns and municipalities like Windsor, Severance, Fort Collins, Swindon, et cetera, are required to fund it without the help of CDOT funding. So why wouldn't you call it a priority if it's still serving and acts, trucks like it up, walks like it up, trucks like it up? Duh, just not state highway. Yeah.
And I think, anything that we send to CDOT as into Region 4 as our priorities, we could either remove things that are not on the state system and say, this, of our tier 1,
Yeah.
these are the ones on your system.
Exactly.
You take them. But it doesn't mean that we can't have non-state facilities on it as our top priority. So we
And
can have all the county roads that are on there.
That is something at CDOT that we need to look at is, well, because if it's not on our state system, like if it's on Harmony out near Plymouth, or if it's not,
Windsor or something, yeah.
yeah. We'll just say, like I just did this yesterday with Upper Front Range, if it's not on our system, we'll say support the project, but not on our system. This is a local agency project. So it still stays as a top priority, but we don't neglect the project or hurt it, but I don't know that it would show up on our team project. If it's not. Or we wouldn't expect it to, but why would we do this every twice? I guess it's one question.
Yeah.
That's fair.
So what's the benefit of having it as the North Front Range tier 1? If it's not gonna get CDOT funding, it's part of that.
probably every grant application we write that can be for off-system projects, right? If it's in your tier 1 priority, I would say, I agree with you that having it is critical.
This
link
is
in
a
our
critical
network.
need, so
Yeah.
that it's recognition of it. And back to the other point that I said, where it's like, it's when you're talking about tier 1 projects, the projects that I would put on tier 1 would be the only one. By definition, would be I-25 and Martin, which would totally qualify for. That category. I think it also shows when we do go after grants, that it's not just Loveland thinking about Loveland, it's all these other communities also found this important as well. So it's more of a holistic effort.
And I did, which we cut off when I printed mine out, unfortunately, but I did put the number of votes each of the projects see, just so acting council members can see what everyone agreed on.
In terms of our timeline, do we know when CDOT will be working?
I think, well, we're waiting, we would want to hear the NFRMPO update as well, but I think that's coming. I want to say, I thought I heard some of this, it'll be this summer, it'll be up. Fall or something.
It had originally been the spring, which is why we did the workshop when we did it, but then after we had planned it for January, it got pushed out for CDOT, so yes. Not a month, but there's.
I feel as the tech, that we should be putting some data to this. I guess I struggle often with us doing this based on our political wins or those sorts of things. I really think as the TAC, we should be looking at the data, looking at our safety data, looking at and using that as a way to make recommendations. So I'm a fan of that. I know it's a lot of work, and so I want to be sensitive to what resources do we have or what data is important for us to have.
So I think we should, if we're gonna do that, we should schedule it far enough out so that everybody who has projects on the list has time to gather that data. And then if you want, I need to know if you want to do it in person, virtual. I don't think I would be good for this unless the weather, but but March, I don't know when various spring break times are. I know that can throw a wrench into things, but is there a general time that would be good that I can look at, and then I'll send out a.
I guess I could just take a quick assessment. Do we think this is worth the time to go through pulling data together or having a deeper conversation about this? Are people happy with findings from the initial prioritization exercise we walked through? Or do we want to dig into this a little bit deeper? Thoughts, feelings, reactions?
Is the goal here to distribute projects that are currently on the tier 1 list to 2 and 3?
I would think, my thinking for this is to rank the tier 1 within the tier, and then if we wanted to move to tier 2, we could do that. Tier 3 was never ranked. It's just kind of listed.
Isn't everything on tier 1 at this point?
No. We added a lot to it, but not every.
So I guess my feeling about it, and I love data, it's super important, but I'm also thinking if there's opportunities that come up for these projects, like, you know, is it a diminishing returns, like you could prioritize and find data and evaluate and reprioritize, and then there still might be a lower priority project that has a great opportunity, like gets funding, so. You know, I guess I absolutely see the value in having like structure around prioritization for sure. And at the same time, there are real life opportunities that come up or, you know, things that political things do impact our projects. So I guess we don't know that it would be totally worth it to go through that.
Yeah, I agree, sort of. I feel like we've had these lists without prioritizing inside of the list, and it's kind of where people have opportunity and money to move things forward, and so.
Is there a situation where our tier 1 priority list where all of our recommendations would not make it onto the CDOT list? Because then I could see some that I prioritize.
Yes, because it's up to Heather and her team to decide what's the priority between the 14 ERs on their list. So what that would look like.
That's another prioritization process that we
No, we don't
Get a vote.
yeah, that's.
So when you have all those projects on the tier 1 list, it looks like we don't really have priority.
Our only vote would be a prioritization saying these are our favorites, then let's focus on. these.
Or our biggest needs, or
Yeah, we found your top 3 or something like that, if you can only do that.
Yeah, and I don't know that, when we did this before, there was an amount, we had, you know, you could have up to, I think it was 500 million across the 10 years. And so we had the cost estimates, and we had them add up to the 500 million. This time we don't really have. Or an amount.
and it may be different, right? The amounts of money we're seeing is lower than it ever has been, so we may not be getting full projects funded, we may be getting projects advanced, and then we have to go seek and find funding to bring those to completion, but I don't know what the strategy is with the less resources, but it may not be the way it's done in the past, where you have a full project funded. Yeah, yes, we'll always be some targets.
I rarely see a priority list actually get done in that exact order. So,
Yeah.
but if it's the difference in making or influencing what ends up on the CDOT list. Yes.
Safety is a big thing right now.
It's always, it's why, I mean, it's like why a lot of us come and do what we do, right?
We always keep back to safety as we're doing them. I did receive a graphic from Deanna. She may have put it up there, but it does say the statewide plan. Looks like the adoption will be taking place May through August, so also.
So we should have our stuff done before May.
Which you guys are.
I don't know, I guess hearing this, I don't know that we need a separate session. Are people generally happy with how the priorities turned out? Do people want a recount? What are we, I added harmony. I know it's on the.
One thing that help perhaps, maybe it's not done by me, but definitely figuring out a way to take the data. We have how many regional significant corridors?
Yeah.
There's a ton of them, right? But doing a really good comprehensive look at all of those, and then spitting out what the data says, here's the rankings based on the data. And then once you have that, then you can figure out, kind of progress it to make it work for both the CDOT tenure list and our regional area, right? For needs, I should say.
I caught Katrina on the phone before this meeting, so I'm like, do you look across region 4, what are your problems, right? You know, kind of where you have crash problems, where you have safety, but they sort of know in the region, so I guess that's where I wish, maybe in future years, when we go through this process, having some compiled data sources and really working over the next few years, you know, ahead of this process next time, to get really good planning and resources aligned for this type of things. That way, when we're coming to this, we're bringing forward thoughtful data and sort of our top priorities for whatever the criteria are at that moment. I wonder if this may be in your.
For this one, yes, you might be. For the RSC prioritization, I think that's something we could do. Over the summer. That's plenty, you know, there's time to get the data for your corridors, figuring out what data you want to look at, and then everyone gathering the data.
Why would we prioritize the RSCs? Harmony's a perfect example of that.
Well, like, what
Where
is
is
it-
the most traffic, right? If Harmony is carrying more traffic.
Like, does
than
it get you
Davis,
anything? I guess it just doesn't get you anything.
But I think if we have it.
Does it? Okay.
Yeah, I think
That's
it could, if the grant funding stream started addressing that,
Yeah.
we had a value to that.
Yeah, that would be good.
Yeah,
I guess it's hard to know what it's gonna be next.
Yeah, but for a road like that, I guess that would be the reason we do something like that, is really knowing where is the traffic, where.
You could help prioritize the list for our future selves, right?
Yeah.
Like,
And also help with the RTP.
Yes. I think that's where our time is best spent, so we don't.
Yeah, I think another priority forward that we thought about bringing up at the meeting with all the bigwigs was 257. It's a parallel route to I-25. All the growth and the Eagles move out to 34, and we have a new King Supers potentially coming in at the intersection of 392 and 257. There's a lot of growth planned along 34 that more south corridor is going to be critical as well in the next 10 years.
So then I also have to review the RSCs and see what might need to come along. Is 30 is a lot, yeah. So if everything's a priority, then nothing's a priority. So, you know, thinking about our certain roads, corridors, or certain corridors really a priority for the region. So 257 is a regional corridor, isn't it?
We have a good definition as to what is a priority, what data are we using to determine that, right?
for how we got on there, honestly.
Yeah, like if we're ranking all these corridors, great, but you know, is it number of crashes, is it ADT? What are we using to differentiate corridors from each other to say, this makes it a number one in our region, the most important corridor?
And that's really two sets of criteria, right? How did you get on the list? And then now that you're on the list, we're gonna use this criteria to.
Thank you. And these have, if you scroll up, I think there is some criteria up in the upper part that talks about what makes it regionally significant and what, but I agree with you, we need to all look in our communities and figure out what that framework is and what's important.
And, you know, when it was, since, you know, it wasn't open for priority days, it's still now.
So we have definitions for regionally significant, we do not have anything for priority.
Work through it, and the framework of, you know, and the CDOT's got some framework that they use, the Transportation Commission, I feel like those are tried and true. Almost every grant I've ever done in my whole career kind of has them until we recently turned into new grants, but most of that criteria has followed, right? Safety is gonna be important. Connectivity, all of those things, so. Maybe we use that framework to start or. Is that totally upset the apple cart, maybe. This is your list.
Convener of funds.
So to recap, we're allowed to add priority corridors, we're allowed to pitch priority corridors to council. We're allowed to add projects based on the priority corridors, how does that process work? Do it, when, yeah, how?
I don't know where you
go about
put it
adding?
though.
What do you mean?
Which tier?
Oh,
Oh,
It
for
wasn't-
adding you.
yeah,
It wasn't at the.
it was not a thing, so,
Yeah.
I mean, is that too late then?
For this list, I guess part of my question.
I was gonna say, could it just become its own tier local priority projects?
Is the list truly just for CDOT, or is it just like from a grant perspective to say that it's for the whole thing?
The reason we created it in the first place, the first
Was
time,
for CDOT.
was for CDOT, but it has become our priority list.
Yeah.
So just because it doesn't make it on the CDOT doesn't mean it's not involved that way.
I guess
We're
rushing
sitting on
an
the side.
update to get to CDOT's timeline, and that's where I feel like we don't necessarily have time to do all that, and maybe we do if we got extended to. Right.
It looks like that, it's June over December.
I still don't see why Harmony and I-25 cannot be added as the I-25.
Thank you.
Because that would solve all the issues right now.
I don't think that's the problem, though. The problem is all the other stuff on me, right? It isn't, that isn't necessary, I mean, that is,
It's coming, isn't.
I experience it every day, so that-
I'm not as concerned about that, and honestly, I was fully planning on waiting till after the whole priority project list kind of rolled through, but then somebody brought it up, so, okay. So I guess we can add, we just wanna understand the rules and like what they are. If there is no time, then let's not add it, but if there is time, then we should do it equitably, and we should make sure that other opportunities, like looking at that list, like, we have 392 widening for 2 to 4 lanes, like. The same thing exists on, for Sovereigns and Windsor for winding out their portions. It just seems like if we have an opportunity to add those same sorts of projects on the list, we should do so. If we don't, then that's fine. But having definitions of what priority corridors are is important. Now, if we want to wait till the next round to do that, that's fine. I-25 one, where there's a will, there's a way. Again, who needs a list? I agree really. So, like, yeah, so like the question got raised and that's kind of where we're at with it. But if you guys want to stick with the priorities we've got, I guess the only thing I would say just to the outsiders is there's an awful lot of priorities. Why would see that shoot any of them? Like, how do we know which is which?
Well, and that's why I think you all are very data driven, right? And so there is a list of priority intersections, a list of, that we have all of this information and sort of know where your problems are.
Yes, and we know where the problems are, but we also look at your guys' list and take those into account. We think about the reality of ever getting a grant or ever actually being. This is something that really will. Because that's where we're at. Can't just find it like you were saying earlier. So that's another bonus thing. But it helps to be on our list. Then we look at your guys' list on our list as well, but we are data driven.
We have other, 402 for us is really important. That's where our growth is happening and truly for Loveland, we'd be better served probably trying to get ahead of some of that and get projects on board, but we have existing funds that have been taken care of on 34. So our priorities lie there right now, but I hear you, but there are other corridors that matter. All of us, right? So. Any thoughts on adding additional corridors at this point ahead of This, I mean, we can be as long as I have no problem with this, yeah.
I don't, maybe.
Yeah.
The problem is they burn.
That's fine. It's like I did the bricks and the work. It's the beginning of this trade.
I think we can add, like you said, let's add I-20
Yeah.
already I-25 now. As the project, but not, and then try to priority for as part of the prioritization process. Because it's already regionally significant corridor, and so that criteria can be used to then prioritize the priority one list, or the tier one, excuse me. I think that may help.
Do you want a plan as the project? Is that what you were thinking, or the project with having a? I don't honestly understand the rules of whether it's project. We're making our own. It's like, we're crafting them, so we're finding.
What do you guys think? Clearly, I mean, we want to study first and then eventually it become a project, so whatever's appropriate based on whatever the definition of the list is.
Maybe a plan that's the, you could put a. Not knowing what that project would be, or being able to estimate that at this point.
Something similar to like what we did with the US 34 stuff.
That's.
Planning, additional planning effort for this full project.
It's good, nice time.
And then we should hear.
One, okay.
So now, if you guys want to go back to definitional, definitions of regional priority, we'll go back to.
Let's go back to this. Yes, thank you. I do think the longer action, I know, of spending some time working on framework for some of this stuff for the future and getting. The GIS work that you guys have done for the grant stuff too, having and maintaining that network of materials, I think will help us too as we go.
And then next month, she couldn't be here today, she had a conflict, but training, but Michaela has been working on a safety data dashboards. She's gonna bring that to show you guys sort of a follow-up from that January council meeting. So our first attempt at it, just to see what you all think about it, and then
So it's there for that idea again. Any other thoughts, questions, feelings? Priority corridors, want to know? Thank you. Safe streets for all funding roundtable. So we, I don't know that anyone's prepared today to share this, you are ready to share, but we could do this next time, as I'm looking at the, oh, we're right on time with chat. So if anyone wants to share, we didn't get this out far in advance, but to share some of the work you're doing for the Safe Streets for All. Some of us are just waiting for correspondence to find out what happens next, but if anybody wants to share the work that they're doing to date on the Safe Streets for All, I think it's just something that it's been neat to sort of see some of these plans as they've gone through, so wanted to just offer some time. Mark's idea from Evans a little while ago, but I was excited. So we also can put this on the agenda again if people want to bring slides or share materials. So anyone want to share, or do you want to wait until we do it next time? And share.
I can give a quick update. I mean, we're really getting kind of towards the tail end of ours, we're moving towards adoption in April. So it's going well. We have a few, you say you're waiting on what's coming, right? I don't know if you're working with TAC. So I actually just emailed her today asking what she's hearing about the federal grants, because we have the Grace grant and the Bridge Improvement Plan grant that were awarded, but no contract yet. And she said that they're allowed to reimburse expenses, but they're not allowed to make any contributions this time on any of the grants. So that's hard to hear, but
Which bridge is this for? The
the BIP grant, There was another one of the federal grants that I had JV.
Are you, is that the one we're partnering on?
That was one of the applications, we did not receive that.
Oh,
This one is a planning grant application for the Finger Park Bridge on Highway 14. It wasn't a whole, I think it was $60-some thousand to help do a feasibility study for that bridge. But it's tied up. And, so is the race grant that we have for country club.
yeah.
So,
It's not very exciting.
but as far as the SS4A, it's going well. It looks like we're still going to get reimbursed for it, so. Yeah. Happy to share, so, in 2023, we were successful with a, supplemental planning and implementation grant. And, we're moving forward with the implementation of separated bike lanes on Center Avenue. And so, we're in the same boat there, where that grant we can be reimbursed for. We also had 2024. Also included in that award was a arterial bike study for the Northwest area, Fort Collins. That will prioritize those corridors where we'll be seeking income. And our goal is to identify implementation grant opportunities for SS4A for those corridors. And that's what would be the highest priority for subsequent implementation grants in SS4A. We also awarded in 2024, but have not received, or we haven't gotten to an IGA yet for a code audit that will allow us to implement our active modes plan recommendations into Lucas standards. And so that's a conversation that we'll be having with sort of the other communities that are involved with those standards, as well as trying to make sure that we have defendable goals for development that match our active modes goals from the active modes plan. That also includes a demonstration project on Lake Street to do separated bike lanes and to also potentially close an intersection at Center and Lake as well. And then that also includes looking at the Harmony corridor and trying to identify priority sections of that to apply for implementation grants as well. So we're trying to leverage that funding, first visions of action plan, then identifying the corridors and getting sort of implementation grant ready proposals for the last two grants.
I can give an update on the city of Loveland. So we're in the process of trying to get an IGA approved to get started on our planning and demonstration grant. We got the same results, can't move forward with the agreement from FHWA, so we're just kind of at a sit and wait game. But our SS4A application really talked about doing additional planning exercises, developing a safety action dashboard so that we can present our data to the public, additional equity mapping, and then also a Vision Zero proclamation. So that's what we're really focusing on there. As for our demonstration projects, the big one is looking at Cleveland and doing a striping exercise to bring it from 3 lanes down to 2 lanes. And then figuring out uses for the additional space there, either for bikes, peds, transit, whatever, to try to look and see how we can do that complete streets there on 287. We had another demonstration for a mini roundabout at Garfield and I believe 10th Street. And the last one was looking at signal camera data and figuring out how to use AI to detect near misses, try to develop where our near misses are occurring so we can be more proactive in addressing safety concerns before they actually become a crash. That's where we're at.
Try, you want. Wrapping up our plan as well. Yeah, right now, so it should be finalized in the next couple months. We're have our last stakeholder meeting in a month. But we've had We finished doing our roadway safety audits. Joe and Martina, that was a lot of fun to get out with these guys and just learn from their experience. But out of our draft and our plan, we'll start to hone in on what those projects might look like and start to pursue, so.
Stephen, we get much better overview than me, but I can do my best. Our plan was adopted by council, which is great, and we are moving forward with our planning and demonstration grant. So we've got a number of quick build projects that we're looking at doing quickly this year. So and then obviously the evaluating, seeing the results of those demonstration projects are going to be a big component as well. So looking forward to that work. I'll ask Stephen to come to the next meeting. Right. Any others? Okay. Thank you for those. That's always good to hear about that work. Our outside partner reports, there is a written report for the NFRMPO Bike and Head Collaborative. The regional transit agencies have any report outs? Mobility update, Aaron?
Yes, hello, everyone. Just updating on the mobility side. We've done plenty of outreach events in the last month with Winter Bike to Work Day and then talking with UC Health. Outside of outreach events, we are in the process of finalizing the My Way to Go program. There's a few other things we need to wrap up before we hard launch it. It's already launched right now, but before we start marketing it and showing it to the public, we want to wrap up a few of the other things when it comes to the boundaries and other stuff with the other platforms in the region. And then we are in the process of starting the coordinated plan for this year. I've been starting to write it and reach out to stakeholders. I should have sent out emails to most of you guys last week. If I did not, please just reach out to me so we can kind of discuss the coordinated plan and get good stakeholder feedback from y'all. So that is it right now.
Thank you very much. All right, and we have written reports in your packet. We'll go to the round table. Start with you here.
I have nothing. As for the city of Loveland, we're starting our 4th Street downtown revitalization project. It's part of the Heart Improvement Plan. Construction is supposed to start next week, which we're really excited about. A lot of work. Our US 34 and TAC intersection improvement project, we're hoping to start work again in the spring with a completion date midsummer 2025. And then just lots of development along US 34. And we continue to see a regional need to address congestion and traffic volumes along 34 corridor. That's all I had.
Our council last evening approved the last tranche of funding for our Pelican Trophy intersection project. So that'll be the second phase of construction will begin in March. And then we're hoping to advertise the Power Trail at Harmony Underpass within the next 2 weeks.
We're hiring. We're going through the final interviews with 2 positions, and we are hiring force controller and mobility director, so we're pouring mental previous position. Also looking to hire an intern, and then I will soon, with Mark's departure, be posting a vacancy, changing from a planner to looking at getting a modeler for the NPO. So to help us with our air quality and our health sheet. So I will be posting as we know. That's all. We are also hiring for transportation planners. Anybody have any suggestions for
next month's agenda. I have had one, it's Ken's idea. But like an MPO 101, since we do have so many new members, just presenting, what is the purpose of the MPO, the TAC, what your role is? Questions. So, that was great. Any comments online? That,